Have you ever wondered why, even after achieving what you once prayed for, something still feels missing? You get the job, the relationship, the recognition, but deep inside there's a silence that won't go away. You smile in photos, laugh with friends, chase goals with passion, but when you're alone, it's like a voice inside keeps whispering, "This isn't it." That feeling is not failure. It's not weakness. It's a signal, a sacred reminder that nothing in this world, no matter how shiny or successful, can fill the space that only God was meant to occupy. We live in a world that teaches us to build our lives on achievement, to chase happiness through likes, wealth, attention, and approval. And for a while it works. The compliments feel good. The wins give us a high, but it never lasts because we weren't created to be satisfied by the temporary. We were designed for something eternal, that hole you feel inside. It's not a flaw in your character. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's your soul crying out for alignment. And that alignment begins when you decide to stop placing your worth in things that can break and start placing it in the one who never will. When God isn't first, everything else suffers under the pressure to make us whole. We expect our partners to complete us, our careers to validate us, our possessions to impress others enough to silence our own insecurity. But it never works. The more we demand from the world, the more we feel disappointed by it. That's not because the world is broken. It's because we're asking it to be our God. We're asking it to give us peace, identity, and purpose. But it can't, only God can. And when He takes His rightful place in our hearts, everything else begins to settle. The anxiety loosens its grip. The restlessness fades. And for the first time, we feel something deeper than happiness. We feel peace. You don't have to keep running. You don't have to keep pretending you're fine when you're not. The peace you're searching for doesn't live at the top of a mountain or the end of a goal. It begins the moment you say, "God, I want you to lead." That choice is not weakness, it's strength. It's the beginning of freedom. Because when you put God first, your identity no longer depends on opinions. Your joy no longer depends on circumstances. And your worth no longer wavers with success or failure. So stay with this message. Let it sink in. Let it disrupt the lies you've believed. Let it challenge the priorities that are stealing your peace. Because if you truly want a life that's unshakable, if you want to live with meaning, power, and clarity, then the answer is simple. Put God first. Not as an afterthought, not when things fall apart, but now. Because when you do, everything else begins to align, and the emptiness finally turns into peace. You were never meant to control everything. But somewhere along the way, you were taught that if you don't hold it all together, everything will fall apart. That if you don't push harder, plan better, stay stronger, you'll be left behind. So you carry the weight of everyone's expectations. You try to fix what's broken, hide what's hurting, and pretend you're fine when inside you're drowning. You cling to routines, to habits, to a version of life that gives the illusion of control. But control is not peace. It's a prison. And the longer you hold on to it, the more it squeezes the life out of you. There is a difference between being responsible and being in control. Responsibility empowers you, but the need to control everything suffocates you. It makes you fearful of change, terrified of loss, and constantly anxious about the future. And that anxiety doesn't come from weakness. It comes from forgetting who's really in charge. When God is not first, we become our own gods. We try to predict every outcome, protect ourselves from every pain, and prepare for every disaster. But it's exhausting. And deep down, you know it's unsustainable. Because no matter how hard you try, you can't control the world. You can only choose where you place your trust. Letting go is not giving up. It's growing up. It's realizing that the things you're most afraid to release are often the very things that are holding you back. Control doesn't create safety, it creates fear. But surrender creates strength. Not the kind of strength that pretends everything's fine, but the kind that stands firm even when things fall apart. When you put God first, you release the lie that you have to do it all alone. You stop worshiping your plans and start trusting His purpose. And in that trust, you find the freedom you've been chasing. Peace is not found in predicting every outcome. Peace is found in knowing that no matter what happens, you are held by something greater than your fear. When God is at the center, storms don't shake you the same way. Delays don't destroy you. Failure doesn't define you, because your faith gives you roots that go deeper than your circumstances. That kind of strength can't be faked. It's built, and it's built by surrendering one moment at a time, one decision at a time, one breath at a time. This is not about religion. It's about rescue. It's about returning to the place where you no longer have to play God. You just have to trust Him. And in that space where fear ends and faith begins, you'll find something priceless. Rest, clarity, confidence. Not because everything is under your control, but because you've finally given control to the one who never fails. Let go. You were never meant to carry what only God can hold. You were not born to be a copy, but every day the world pressures you to become one, fit in, blend, say what's popular, do what's expected. You're told who to be, how to act, what to believe, and slowly, without realizing it, you start to shrink. You bury your convictions, you silence your voice, you wear masks to gain approval, hoping someone, somewhere, will finally validate your worth. But no matter how many followers you gain, no matter how loud the applause gets, deep down you still feel invisible, because you've lost touch with the only identity that truly matters, the one given to you by the one who created you. The world tells you to define yourself, but that's a heavy burden to carry. It turns your worth into a project. You're always building, always proving, always performing, and when the performance ends, the emptiness returns. That's not living, that's surviving. And you weren't made to survive. You were made to live with clarity, with courage, with conviction. You were made to reflect something eternal, not temporary trends. When God isn't first, your identity gets hijacked by culture, crushed by comparison, and buried under expectations that were never yours to carry. There is a kind of peace that only comes when you stop chasing validation and start embracing truth. You don't need to be accepted by everyone to be valuable. You don't need to be liked by the crowd to be loved by your Creator. You were made in His image, shaped by His hands, and set apart for a purpose that no opinion can cancel. And when that becomes your foundation, everything else changes. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop begging for attention. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You begin to rise, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence, because your identity is no longer up for debate. It's already been declared. The moment you put God first is the moment you begin to remember who you are. You're not a mistake. You're not your past. You're not what they said about you. You are chosen. You are loved. You are enough, not because of what you've done, but because of who He is. That truth is unshakable. It doesn't move with circumstances. It doesn't fade with time. And it cannot be stolen, no matter how many times life tries to break you. You don't need to chase the world when you know who you belong to. You don't need to fear rejection when you've already been accepted. Your value isn't earned, it's remembered. So stand up, speak up, take up the space God designed for you, because the world doesn't need another echo. It needs your true voice, or the one that was born when you were, the one that returns when you choose to live from truth, not pressure. That is the power of putting God first. It doesn't just change your life. It gives your life back to you. When you know who you are, you begin to ask a deeper question. Why am I here? What am I meant to do with this life? But that question can feel overwhelming when you're trying to answer it alone. You search for signs, read advice, try different paths, but nothing feels certain. And that uncertainty breeds restlessness. It feels like you're drifting, even when you're working hard. That's because purpose doesn't come from productivity. It comes from alignment. And alignment only happens when you stop living for your own plans and start living for something greater than yourself. You were not created to wander without direction. The pull you feel inside for something more, it's real, it's sacred. It's a call from the one who made you saying, I have more for you. But more doesn't begin with striving, it begins with surrender. Because the truth is, purpose isn't something you build. It's something you discover. And you only discover it when you stop clinging to control and start listening to the voice that's been guiding you all along. That voice doesn't shout, it whispers. And to hear it, you have to silence the noise of ego, comparison, and fear. When God is first, purpose becomes clear. Not always easy, not always fast, but clear. Your life takes on a weight that wasn't there before. Your choices carry meaning. Your pain becomes part of the process, not a reason to quit. Even your waiting becomes preparation. Nothing is wasted when God leads. What once felt random begins to make sense. What once felt like failure becomes fuel. Because now you're not living for approval, you're living on assignment. And that changes everything. Surrender is not about losing yourself. It's about finding who you really are. When you give God your plans, He doesn't shrink your life. He expands it. He doesn't strip away your dreams. He purifies them. You stop chasing what you think you want and start walking toward what you were made for. That shift is powerful because it moves you from anxiety to peace, from confusion to clarity, from survival to significance. You wake up with direction. You move with conviction. You speak with purpose. Because now, your life isn't just about you. It's about something eternal flowing through you. You don't need all the answers. You just need to trust the one who already sees the whole path, the one who knows every step you'll take and still says, "Follow me." That kind of faith rewires how you see everything. The job you work, the people you meet, the struggles you face, they all begin to fit into a bigger picture. And in that picture, your life matters more than you realize. You're not here by accident, you're here on purpose. And that purpose begins the moment you stop asking the world to define your calling and start asking God to lead you into it. That's where fulfillment lives. That's where you begin to rise. Peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of stability in the middle of chaos. Most people search for peace in the wrong places, in comfort, in control, in distraction. They numb themselves with entertainment, bury themselves in work, or chase pleasure to escape the noise inside. But the quiet never lasts, because the kind of peace the world offers is shallow. It's based on things going right. It depends on feelings, timing, and outcomes. And the moment life changes, that peace disappears like smoke. What you truly need isn't temporary relief. You need something deeper, something unshakable. When you put God first, your foundation changes. Suddenly, peace is no longer something you chase. It's something you carry. It doesn't matter what's happening around you, because what's happening inside of you is grounded. There's a stillness that can't be explained, a calm that doesn't make sense. That's the peace of God. It doesn't come from perfect conditions. It comes from trust, from knowing that even if you don't see the way forward, you're not walking alone. That kind of peace isn't passive, it's powerful, because it makes you resilient. It anchors your heart. It quiets the storm inside, even if the storm outside still rages. You don't have to keep living in fear. You don't have to brace for the next disaster or overthink every decision. You don't have to let anxiety be your guide. When God is at the center of your life, He becomes your calm in the chaos. He doesn't promise to remove every storm, but He does promise to walk with you through every one of them. And when you know He's with you, you stop reacting out of panic and start moving with peace. That peace doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours to hold. Real peace brings clarity. It clears the fog of worry and gives you the courage to move forward even when things feel uncertain. It helps you show up for your life with strength, with patience, and with faith. You don't need everything to be perfect to feel at peace. You just need to know that God is in control and you are in His hands. That truth doesn't just calm your heart. It changes how you live. You stop striving, you start trusting, you stop rushing, you start resting. Not in laziness, but in confidence. Peace doesn't come when everything is solved. It comes when your spirit is surrendered. And the most powerful thing you can do is choose to trust God in the middle of the unknown. That's where the peace begins to grow. That's where it becomes your foundation. Not a momentary feeling, but a daily strength. One that can't be shaken by news, pressure, or pain. When you put God first, you begin to walk through life differently. Not because the road is easy, but because your heart is finally steady. And from that place of peace, you begin to live with power. There is a kind of strength the world doesn't understand. It's not loud. It doesn't seek attention. It doesn't dominate others to prove its power. It's quiet, steady, and unshakable. The kind of strength that doesn't collapse under pressure, that holds firm when life gets heavy. that stays grounded when everything else is falling apart. But this strength doesn't come from self-reliance. It doesn't come from pretending to be invincible. It comes from knowing where your power truly lies. And it begins the moment you stop trying to do life alone and start depending on God to carry what you were never built to bear. You were not designed to be your own source of strength. That's why pretending you're fine only makes you feel more empty. That's why pushing harder doesn't always make you stronger. At some point, you realize that strength isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing where to turn when you don't. It's about choosing trust over panic, faith over fear, surrender over pride. Real strength is born when you admit you're not enough and let God become the strength within you. When He becomes first, you no longer have to fake it. You're free to be real. In that honesty, you become powerful. The pressure to prove yourself fades. The need to wear a mask disappears. You stop defining your strength by how much you can carry and start measuring it by how deeply you trust. You become the kind of person who doesn't crumble when the weight gets heavy because you're no longer carrying it alone. That's the secret of people who seem unshaken. It's not that they've never been broken. It's that they've learned who to lean on when life hurts. And that connection becomes their power. When you walk with God, you don't walk with fear. You move through life with peace, with confidence, with resilience. Not because the path is easy, but because the one who walks with you never leaves. That's what makes you strong. Not your willpower, not your achievements, but your connection to something eternal. That connection doesn't eliminate your humanity, it empowers it. You still feel pain, but you're not defined by it. You still face struggle, but you're not overcome by it, because inside of you lives a strength the world didn't give and can never take away. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to win every battle to prove your worth. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay standing when everything tells you to quit. Sometimes the boldest move is trusting God when nothing makes sense. That's real power. It's not the kind that burns out, it's the kind that lasts. And when you put God first, that power becomes your reality. Quiet, strong, unshakable, the kind of strength that changes not just your life, but the lives of everyone around you. When God becomes your foundation, everything else begins to align. The confusion that once clouded your decisions starts to clear. The noise that pulled you in 100 directions starts to fade. The weight of trying to be everything for everyone lifts, because your life is no longer built on pressure, it's built on purpose. You stop living in reaction to what happens around you and start responding from a place of truth within you. That shift is not small, it is transformational, because when your soul is aligned with God, clarity replaces chaos and peace replaces striving. Suddenly, your time feels sacred. You begin to treat each moment not as a race, but as a gift. You no longer chase busyness to feel important. You live with intention. You stop measuring your value by productivity and start living with presence. Your relationships change too. You no longer look to people to complete you or validate you. You give love more freely. You forgive more easily. You speak more gently. Because your heart is no longer starving, it's full. And when your soul is fed by God, you don't need others to constantly fill you. You're able to pour out without running dry. Your decisions become simpler, not because life becomes easy, but because your priorities become clear. You stop asking what feels good and start asking what honors God. You no longer live based on pressure or emotion. You live based on conviction. That brings a level of confidence the world can't touch. You walk into each day not wondering who you are, but knowing whose you are. That truth grounds you. It guides your steps, guards your mind, and strengthens your spirit. Even the hard moments begin to carry meaning. Pain doesn't feel pointless anymore. Delays don't feel like punishment. You start to see the hand of God even in the waiting. You trust that what didn't happen wasn't meant to, and that what's for you will find you when you're ready. That kind of trust frees you from fear. It frees you from rushing. It frees you from regret. You begin to walk in rhythm with grace instead of racing against time. And from that place, you begin to thrive, not just survive. Putting God first isn't about rules. It's about relationship. It's about positioning your heart in alignment with the one who made it. And when that happens, the transformation is undeniable. You feel it in your decisions, in your emotions, in your habits, in your vision. You feel more alive, not because everything is perfect, but because your soul is no longer lost. It's anchored. And from that anchor, you rise with purpose, with power, and with peace. Because now you're not just living for success, you're living for something eternal. And that kind of life cannot be shaken. That kind of life is what you were always meant to live. It starts with one decision. Put God first. Everything else will follow. When God is truly first, everything else finds its place. Fear no longer controls your thoughts because you know who holds your future. Doubt doesn't paralyze you because you trust the process even when you can't see the outcome. Anxiety loses its grip because your heart is anchored in something unshakable. You begin to live with boldness, not because you're confident in yourself, but because you're confident in the one who never fails. That kind of life is rare, it's powerful, and it's available to you the moment you decide to stop chasing the world and start following truth. You start to recognize that fulfillment isn't found in what you achieve, it's found in what you align with. Every success without God at the center feels empty, no matter how impressive it looks on the outside. But even small steps taken with Him feel rich with meaning. You stop needing to prove your worth because you understand it's already been given. You stop needing to compare your path to others because you trust that your journey is custom built for you. That quiet trust becomes your confidence. That alignment becomes your direction. And suddenly life feels lighter, not because the challenges disappear, but because your burdens are no longer yours to carry alone. You begin to notice how your habits shift. You value stillness more than noise. You choose depth over distraction. You protect your peace, not out of fear, but out of reverence for what's growing inside you. You stop feeding your mind with what weakens you and start feeding your spirit with what strengthens you. The more you do, the more your life begins to transform from the inside out. It's not a dramatic explosion. It's a quiet unfolding, a steady, sacred becoming. And everyone around you begins to notice, not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. Not because you're perfect, but because you're anchored. When God is first, even your pain begins to serve a purpose. It no longer breaks you, it builds you, it teaches you, it humbles you, it opens your eyes to what truly matters. You stop asking, why me, and start declaring, use me. You no longer fight to escape the valley. You walk through it knowing you're being refined. That mindset shift is everything. It's what takes you from surviving to leading, from questioning to knowing, from being lost to becoming found. This is what it means to live with God at the center. It's not just about what you believe, it's about how you breathe, how you walk, how you love, how you live. Every moment becomes intentional. Every step becomes sacred. And even when life gets heavy, your spirit stays light because you know you're walking with purpose. You know who goes before you. You know where your strength comes from. This is your moment, not to add more noise, but to choose what's real. Put God first and let the rest fall beautifully into place.